In my previous video, I talked about George Benson's famous picking technique, and I broke it down and showed you some ways that you can practice it and implement it in your own playing. In this video, I'll be breaking down 4 iconic George Benson picking licks and talk about the concepts that are involved so you can create your own burning lines with them. At the end of this video, I'm going to be combining everything together into a written out etude that you can use for your practice. All right, let's get into it. Alright, our first line comes from George Benson's solo on Billy's Bounce and sounds like this. So this line shows 2 components of George Benson's picking. The first idea is sweep picking upward with either just an upstroke and 2 downstrokes, or just 3 downstrokes, being all downstrokes. These sweep patterns will often be in major and minor triad shapes like the ones I just showed you and in this line, and can be easily moved up and down the neck. The second concept in this line is the idea of changing strings on an upstroke, which is demonstrated in this lick. Notice how everything changes on an upstroke, which frees our pickup to move. Notice if we change on a downstroke, we have to lift up the pick in order to change strings. But if we change on an upstroke, our pick hand is free. If we combine both of these concepts together, we could create lines that sound like this. Or lines that sound kind of like this. Okay, so the next line comes from George's iconic solo on Willow Weep for me and sounds like this. This line expands on the 2 concepts that we talked about before. The first one being changing strings on upstrokes. You'll notice that the diminished pattern that George is playing fits perfectly with his picking technique and fits well over the D13 flat 9. It's important to note that finding patterns and reworking licks in order to fit our picking is a staple of George Benson's approach. Secondly, we expand the idea of sweep picking. So instead of playing our triad-based shapes like we were before, we're now sweeping bar chords completely across the neck. We could also practice this by sweeping bar chords through a key, like this. Also, an interesting thing about this line is the B minor triad over our D13 flat 9 sound. The B minor triad gives us that 13 sound over the D. And then George combines that with the diminished patterns, which adds the diminished or flat 9 sound to our line. Here's a line that I created that combines all the concepts that George has shown us so far. Our third Benson line comes from, again, his solo on Billy's Bounce and sounds like this. This is a great example of using hammer-ons and pull-offs to make George's picking work. Notice the lawn pull-off in the first measure. If we played this with alternate picking, we would end on a downstroke, which again would cause us to lift our pick over the strings and slow us down. Here's a line that I created that shows this concept in perfect use. Another way that George uses hammer-ons and pull-offs is to make 3-note per string runs work, such as in this line. By using pull-offs, we can get our 3-note per string runs to work by making sure we change on upstrokes. Alright, so our last line combines everything that we worked on together in this lesson together in one line and comes from his solo on Willow Weep for Me. Let's take a listen. Notice the first part of our run uses down picks in a sweep motion to change strings. And it's also a very convenient pattern, again, using patterns to fit the picking. Then we have a pull-off to make sure that we can change our strings on an upstroke. And then lastly, we have alternate picking, again focusing on changing strings on an upstroke and using fingerings that encourage that movement. I think studying picking in the way that we talked about in this lesson is very useful for a couple reasons. The first being that, one, you can work up lines in language and get them to the maximum speed possible, especially if you're playing fast tempos or you just want to put in fast runs like George does. Secondly, I think this is important to study because it forces you to think about your fingering and make it to where it fits your picking. And this is important no matter what language you're playing, is to make it as easy as possible for you to play it. To close this lesson, I want to play one chorus over a blues and show you how you could apply some of the concepts that we talked about in this lesson. If you would like the PDF and guitar profile for this etude and every example that we went over, then make sure to sign up for my Patreon, which you can find linked in the video description below. I want to thank you guys so much for watching this video about George Benson's picking and how to apply it. If you want to see more George Benson, then make sure to not only check out my original George Benson picking video, but also another video that I did that covers his picking on blues and some burn-in blues language. All right, thank you guys so much for watching, and remember to always keep swinging.